Praise the Lord, everybody. What a beautiful day it is. I appreciate you coming on my channel today. I want to encourage those of you who are struggling with your mental health. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and our mental health is just as important as our physical health, right? Especially in the times that we're living in. There are so many things happening around us, around the world. So many people struggling with their mental state, their emotional state. But I was thinking about that and how sometimes, like if we have um, I don't know, if we have a cold or if we have some type of acute physical illness, something that's short term, we could take a pill or we can rest up, drink fluids for a few days, and we're better in a few days. But sometimes, most of the time, when we're struggling with mental sickness or being emotionally unwell, our mental health issues, it's a process. It's a process, especially, I'm not talking about severe mental illness, like your psychotic disorders, schizophrenia, those things, but the anxiety and depression, those disorders, the mood disorders, um, those things we can work through, but it takes time. Now, sometimes I'm not saying that God cannot deliver us um, quickly, because there have been people that have been delivered from anxiety and depression suddenly, immediately, right? God can do that. We serve that kind of God. But for the most part, even if you are immediately delivered from anxiety or depression, you will still have moments where anxiety or feelings of um, overwhelmingness creep in, or sadness creeps in, or fear creeps in. Disappointments will happen because we live in a fallen world. But what I am saying is that you have to learn how to deal with that, and learning how to deal with um, the cares of this life is a process. Not everybody is at the same space. Um, some of us learned how to deal with certain things as a child. Our parents were able to teach us. Some of us, our parents didn't have the skills themselves. There's a lot of different things that can be a result of us being unable to work through anxiety or moments of stress and depression. Now, I want to point it out that when you say anxiety and depression, that means that your symptoms have reached a clinical level, right? So that's not saying that everybody that has stress or stressors in their life, or they have moments of sadness, or they might be going through grieving process, or they might be worried about an impending deal or whatever, that they have anxiety and depression. The truth is, we all have times where we feel those things, right? But when it gets to the point where it's negatively impacting your day to day life, that's when it's reached a level of clinical disorder. So I want people to understand that. But either way, clinical disorder or just moments of the sadness, moments of worry, moments of stress, moments where you are feeling like, I don't know how to do this. That is something that we all experience. But either way, you have to learn how to deal with those feelings and those emotions, right? And so I think it's interesting that a lot of us, we put a lot of energy and effort into our physical self, but we neglect our emotional self. And really, if your emotional self is together, then the other things in your life will come together, right? Um, and how do we get our emotional self together? especially as believers, addressing our spiritual self, right? Because we need the strength to move forward. We need to learn how to move, how to navigate things in life. And as believers, the word of God should be our first resource. Now, I'm not saying, just deal with the spiritual side of it and don't deal with the natural. But what I am saying is that when we deal with the spiritual side, we can effectively deal with the natural side. And so the spiritual side helps us to put things into perspective. Now, in Philippians 4:11, and I'm going to read it, I'm going to start in verse 11. It says, this is Paul talking. Not that I was ever in need, for I have learned how to be content with whatever I have. Verse 12 says, I know how to live on almost nothing or with everything. I have learned the secret of living in every situation, whether it is with a full stomach or empty, with plenty or little. For I can do everything through Christ who gives me strength. Even so, you have done well to share with me in my present difficulty. And so what we see in that is that Paul had ups and downs in life. He was extremely persecuted. He went with plenty. He had plenty at times and he had little at times. Similar to how we live. Sometimes we have plenty, sometimes we have little. But he said one thing. He said, I've learned to be content in whatever state I'm in. When we learn contentment, it helps to ease the emotional distress, because contentment is saying that I'm okay with being where I'm at right now. For example, I remember years ago, my husband and I tell this testimony all the time. We ate off a pot of chili. But as we ate off that pot of chili, I was just grateful that I had chili to eat. I wasn't worried about eating steak, shrimp. I don't even like shrimp, but we weren't worried about eating the finer things in life. We were worried about, we were focused on what we had, and we were grateful for that. We were content with what we had. Now, that's not saying that we didn't want to eventually do better, right? No one wants to stay in the same place. But in every season of our life, it's a learning process. There's a learning curve. There's something that we can learn from it. There's something that we can pull from it. And in those times when we were struggling financially, while we were working on stabilizing financially, that's another area that I want to talk about one day, is financial well-being and how that impacts your mental state. But while we were eating that pot of chili, our focus wasn't on, why am I in this place? Why do we have to eat a pot of chili for a whole week? I can't believe we don't have anything else to eat. It wasn't on that. Our focus was on, how can we get to the next level? But while we're in this level, how can we be happy where we're at? And I mean, we were grateful for that chili, right? We weren't sad about it. We weren't depressed about it. We weren't overly anxious about it. We were just content in the state that we were in. And we look back now, some 20 something years later, and we realize that we learned valuable lessons during those times of struggles, during those times where we couldn't barely make ends meet. We were literally living paycheck to paycheck. Sometimes we didn't have enough, but our needs were always supplied. We learned to depend on God, to trust God. We learned gratitude during that time. We learned to keep money in its place. Money has its place, but it should not consume you. It shouldn't be your whole focus in life. We learned how to just navigate those emotions, right? We learned a lot of valuable things in that contentment. And that's what Paul was saying in Philippians 4:13 through 15, 11 through 15. he was showing that even if you have a lot, even if I have a little, I've learned to be content wherever I'm at. And when we learn that, it gives us a level of peace. It gives us a level of joy that, even though things aren't how we want them to be, we're in this space, we're still here and we're still blessed. We still have food to eat. We still have shelter, Gratitude and being content goes a long way in helping us stabilize our emotional state. And so I want to encourage you today, just begin, don't focus on what you don't have, right? Don't focus on what you don't have, but focus on what you do have and be grateful for that. Be content in that state. Whatever state you're in, whatever state you're in, a lot of young people go through it because they want. And I fell victim to that. I did. I fell victim to that. I wanted everything at an early age. I wanted it quickly. We don't understand when we're younger that working towards something goes a long way. We want everything right now. The right now young people are. And nothing's changed. Our young people are still like that. I think it's gotten worse over the years, but nonetheless, young people, their mindset is pretty much the same. We want what we want when we want it. That's what young people do. And so when you want what you want when you want it, and you don't want to wait for it, there's a level of stress, a level of feeling overwhelmed, level of fear that creeps in. And so instead of wanting when we want what we want when we want it, being content in what we have and working toward our future helps us to relinquish the worry and the stress that comes with wanting everything right now. And so that's what Paul was saying. He's saying that, I've just learned to be content in whatever state that I'm in. And when we learn that, we have a level of peace. And content literally means in a state of peaceful happiness, in a state of peaceful happiness. And so when we're in a place of peaceful happiness, in a state of it, we are satisfied. We're satisfied. And when we're satisfied, we're not worried about tomorrow or what we could have, right? And so we're not as anxious. We're not as sad or disappointed about things. We can maintain a level of peace. Contentment is literally a state of peaceful happiness. And so that's my prayer for those who are listening today, that God will put you in a place of contentment, a state of peaceful happiness. And as you go forth in your day to day and tomorrow and the next, just begin to be grateful for what you have now. Begin to thank God for the state that you're in now, right? Find some positive in that. You may be struggling with something. We all are, right? But we can all find something to be grateful for, some level of contentment in our lives. And when we find contentment, then we'll be in a state of peaceful happiness. So God bless you. May the love of God keep you today. And I'll talk to you soon.